Howdy everybody, this is Alejandro. Don't know if anyone's there, but right now getting everything set up, so just give us a second and we'll be on at around 8 p.m. Connor's running a tiny bit late, but we may start just a little bit early, who knows, but yeah, just stick around and we will go ahead and get to the topics very soon. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you at 8 p.m.
What we do here is go back.
Howdy everyone, this is Alejandro with SEDS. I am the Vice President of SEDS, and this is going to be the February 14th edition of Spaced Out. Tonight we're going to be talking about new news in space, new different developments in space technology as well as space science. And joining me tonight again is Connor Jakubik. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Howdy. I'm Connor Jakubik, friend of Alejandro, and aerospace engineering students at A&M.
Yep, and he's also a member of a team called SpaceCraft, VR development team. We'll talk about it in just a little while because they're going to be doing some cool stuff in the very near future. But yeah, if you guys want to go ahead and tell us if there are any audio issues or if there are any if there's anything going on that you guys need us to fix, or if you guys want to ask some questions, go ahead and just shoot us a thing in the chat. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Gotta save that. So first up, of course, is going to be the rover Opportunity, which after about 7 months since last June, right? So July, August, September, October, November, December, January. Yeah, about 7 months. NASA has finally given up on trying to contact it. They've sent over 800 messages to try and contact the rover and wake it up, but unfortunately none of those messages returned anything. So unfortunately we're just going to have to give it up and bid farewell to the great rover that was Opportunity.
So the exact thing that probably was Opportunity's demise was like extreme cold on Mars. Since it couldn't get enough power from its solar panels, probably due to dust accumulation, the heaters on it that normally don't need to function too well because the rover warms itself up from moving around.
Right.
The heaters on it, they didn't have any solar power, so they couldn't heat up the electronics. So the electronics probably got cold enough to the point where it started cracking the traces on the boards, which is not good for actually working electronics.
Yeah, when you're sitting in what's the temperature on Mars? Like -10 at the highest centigrade, and then it goes down to what, -100?
Something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty extreme cold. No matter what they say about the Northeast being colder than Mars during the winter vortex, I mean that's colder than Mars when the Mars is at its hottest. Mars usually gets down to around -100. Even lower temperatures, centigrade, during the cold winter months. So compound that by the massive dust storm that apparently flew over the entirety of the planet for several months. Then without power, without heat, as you just said, yeah, just a double whammy. It took it out. I mean, look at this photo. Went from that over there. It's just insane. But we bid thee farewell, Opportunity. Thank you very much for 15 years of amazing scientific achievements and discoveries, including the discovery of evidence of water being there from millions and millions, billions of years ago, as well as numerous other chemical and geological scientific discoveries. It was 15 years of a 90-day mission. That's crazy. Like I guess you could say they don't build them like they used to, but I mean, who knows? Maybe maybe Curiosity will be here in a few decades, right?
Maybe they underestimated the thickness of the wheels required, so now they're on damage control for that. They basically drive slower and a little bit better to try to not damage the wheels. Yeah,
we had Carrie Bean, who is an ex-SEDS member, ex-SEDS president, former Aggie, who currently works at JPL, and she helps drive the rovers, and she's currently being trained on driving Curiosity, and she talked to us about that last semester. So some serious stuff that they're trying to do to make sure that that thing keeps going, and just some technical information on how long the rover actually went. Let's see. So I mean, almost 15 years. So at the end, it traveled over a marathon's worth of distance. So over 23 miles. So just over 28 miles. You have something to say?
Marathon is 26, isn't it?
Oh, 26.2. My bad.
Yeah.
My bad. I'm bad at math. My bad. Yeah, over 28 miles, just over 15 years, 5,353 souls, which is a Martian day. So that's an amazing mission profile, and definitely someplace that I want to visit in a few decades when I jump on Elon Musk's Starship.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna go visit it. Not touch it. I mean, tourists are gonna keep away, right? But hopefully one day we can go retrieve it and put it in a museum or build a monument to it.
Yeah, don't send Nick Cage to Mars. He'll steal the rover.
Oh God. Yeah, he can steal a rover just like he stole the Declaration of Independence.
Yes.
And in other space news, astronomers find the first evidence of a giant collision between exoplanets. So I was perusing some of the online forums, and this came up. Basically, two very dense Earth-like planets came together and collided. Oops, sorry about that. That was my phone. Two relatively dense bodies came together about 1,700 light years away and collided, leaving behind a single iron core, kind of like our planet, or our planet's iron core. And I guess here is a demonstration of the impact. So this is kind of like what is theorized to have happened to Earth billions and billions of years ago, and it's the impact that we theorize created the moon. So I just found this and thought it was really, really cool. Let's see. Argue that the denser planet Kepler 107c, oof, there we go.
That's a lot of damage.
That is a lot of damage. Yeah, this is kind of what scientists think happened to the Earth when I forgot what the planetoid's name was, but apparently we had a planetoid crash into the Earth and it created the moon out of a ring system that came from the collision. So this is pretty cool. This was the first ever cited example of such a phenomenon. So it's heartening to see that something like this can happen, and I guess lends credence to the fact, to the idea that maybe our planet went through the same thing.
Yeah, one of the theories for why these sorts of collisions might have happened is early on in planet formation, it's not all nice and like segregated. Where we have planets like all in different distances from the sun. They switch places like a lot in more volatile systems. So if one of these switching places goes badly, it could mean a collision.
Yeah, I once I was listening to another podcast featuring the particle physicist Brian Cox, and he was talking about how some models and a lot of astronomers believe that the interactions and the place switching, as you described, of Saturn and Jupiter in the early solar system caused gravitational phenomena to occur to allow for the creation of 4 inner rocky planets: Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. And without Jupiter cleaning out the solar system, and without Saturn pulling Jupiter back out into the outer solar system, we may never have existed. So a lot of different theories on how these different collisions, the place switching, and the early solar system, the dynamics of the early solar system, a lot of arguments over how that may have created our basically perfect little scenario for life to occur on Earth. So, and it also means that it's probably going to be very difficult to find another solar system that has the same kind of conditions. Yeah. For not just life, not just bacteria, but actual intelligent civilization life. And that's kind of what we're trying to find with SETI and all that. But just the conditions are so rare. I think he said that he theorized that there may be like 5 of such solar systems in an entire galaxy. And just to think like one galaxy is 100 billion plus stars. It's crazy. Anyway, moving on, another NASA announcement. So they just announced that they are going to be sending another telescope up into space called SPHEREx, let's see, spectrophotometer for the history of the universe, epoch and reionization of ICE's explorer.
That's a lot.
Yeah. It's a word. It's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So apparently it's going to be a 2-year mission funded at $242 million. Not too shabby for a space telescope. It's going to be doing non-visual light wavelength observations, so near-infrared light, looking for galaxies towards the beginning of the universe as well as the closer periods. Let's see. gather data on more than 300 million galaxies, as well as 100 million stars in our own Milky Way. So apparently it's going to be looking for some trace elements for biosignatures, like water, methane, oxygen, and stuff like that.
Yeah, it could like basically done in like this sort of like all in one way. Like they're basically looking for like amounts, like in percentages of these sorts of chemical signatures from the spectrometry for like areas of the universe, not for like specific planets or stars or something like that.
Yeah,
it's just like for, well, maybe specific stars, but definitely not specific planets or anything like that. So you need a little more specific and like really accurate telescope work for planet spectrometry.
Spectroscopy. Oh god, those words.
Yeah.
Spectrography.
Spectrometry. I think.
Spectrometry. Yeah. Okay. Let's just go with that. So, yeah. I mean, I once heard, like, you know, looking at different nebula and looking at different gas clouds around the Milky Way, looking for those biosignatures instead of just looking at singular stars with telescopes that don't have the angular resolution to look at a single star to see a single exoplanet. You know, we have to wait until, like, what, the 30-meter telescopes are up and running, and then we have to wait until JWST is finally launched. You know, the running joke, right?
Yeah.
I feel so bad, you know. James Webb, like, it's the greatest thing ever, but it never launches. It's never ready. I heard that they were kind of going through final testing phases, so maybe we'll get a launch date sometime in the next couple of years.
I think the supposed date is 2021 right now. 2021? Like, that's the planned date.
Okay.
But it's been as early as 2015, I think, right?
Oh god.
That's when
I
it
think
started.
Liam said, what is it? It was supposed to be launched in like the early 2000s, and then it was pushed back into the late 2000s, and then 20-teens, and then the 2020s, and there's always that comic that says it'll converge at around 2026. So who knows? This thing will definitely launch before then. Well, no. If it's 2021, then maybe not. But this thing will probably launch before the JWST, which is kind of sad, but oh well. Anyway, it's being led by principal investigator James Bach of Caltech, going to be managing it from JPL over in California. So it's going to be fun. Yes.
Oh, it's number 2014. XKCD. You pull up?
Oh god, we pulled it up so many times at this point.
Oh, we have?
Yeah.
Have we already done on this podcast?
We've done it like every single one. We've talked about JWST and shown the comic.
All
we
right.
might as well do it the tradition, right?
Yeah.
XKCD JWST, right? Yeah, there we go. The convergence.
The top one. Just go to okay.
There we go. Sometime late 2026. Yeah. It should work, right? Should. But speaking of projects that have taken many, many years, the International Space Station has, of course, its refabricator and its 3D printing system for tools. So a couple years ago, they showed off the fact that they could print various plastic tools and implements to be used on the space station. So instead of having to ship it up on a Cygnus or on a Cygnus cargo flight or a Dragon, they can just they can just send the part file, 3D print it, and kaboom, there you go. So apparently they've developed a new recycler mechanism that'll actually be able to recycle the plastic, which is kind of interesting because normal 3D printers can't really recycle or use recycled plastic because the process of 3D printing it and extruding it causes issues with the actual integrity of the plastic. So apparently the process they use for this 3D printer is slightly different and allows for recycling. Let's see. Yeah, this is really cool. Future space habitation will require 3D printing and additive manufacturing, not only for tools and implements, but there's a lot of research going into building homes, habitation modules and stuff like that, even entire spacecraft by 3D printing. So once we get 3D printing down, and especially recycling of 3D printed material, that's going to be really, really useful.
I've also seen it basically with additive manufacturing. That could be done with like ISRU for in-situ resource utilization. All these big words today. That could be done for, say, a moon habitats, and you need radiation shielding for it. You could get that from the surrounding like regolith, and basically use some sort of refinery process to get the best sorts of materials for your shielding, and then extrude that with some robots onto like prefabricated domes.
Prefabrication. God, we really need to work on our diction.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a growing field, and it's a very exciting field, because it means that when we actually get to a different planet, we won't actually have to ship everything. You know, Starship is fantastic. It'll bring 100 tons to Mars, fantastic and all that. But we'd rather put, I think everyone agrees that we'd rather put all of that launch capability towards, you know, bringing rovers, bringing computer systems, plants, biomatter, things that you can't get on site, versus building materials and habitats and all of that. Maybe an inflatable or two, but you know, it's better to build on site. It would suck if you'd have to move every apartment building on planet Earth from the manufacturing facility to where you're actually building it. That would be a huge pain in the ass, but you know, whatever. Anyway, speaking of Starship and SpaceX, of course, there's news from SpaceX. So this week and last week, really, since we didn't have a podcast last week, we can cover it a little bit. SpaceX, and specifically Elon Musk, revealed that the engineering team had finally gotten Raptor up and running. So Raptor is the next generation of SpaceX engine. It utilizes a high pressure combustion chamber, as well as a completely new full flow staged combustion system compared to the partial flow.
It's like an open cycle.
Cycle, yeah.
Yeah, for the Merlin engine, it was basically they use part of the fuel to drive the turbine that pumps the rest of it in the turbo pump.
Yep.
So with the full, and then after the fuel gets used to go through the turbine, it is just exhausted out of another nozzle. But with the full flow, they reuse that fuel for the actual combustion, so it's even more efficient. There's issues though with combusting fuel that's already been partially combusted and stuff like that, where it makes it really hard to do this sort of thing. It makes it like really hard maintenance problems, as well as stuff where you have issues where you have like flow instability or stuff getting clogged, various things. I think Scott Manley did a video where he went through the entire sort of like reasons why on this.
Basically, it's just that open cycle engines are open cycle. They waste a little bit of the fuel and the oxidizer to engage the rest of the system. So they have this pre-burner, right? And you know, you just burn it early, and then dump a little bit extra to get all the turbines running. And with this one, it won't actually waste any of that pre-burned exhaust, so to speak. So on the actual Falcon 9, you have the Merlin 1D engine, which uses the open cycle combustion method. And there you can see that is the exhaust that comes out of the pre-combustion of the fuel and the oxidizer to turn those turbo pumps and give the energy of that explosion, that pre-combustion, over to the turbo pumps to pressurize the rest of the fuel and ignite the rest of it to create the actual thrust. So instead of having all of that waste, SpaceX is gonna do a fully closed cycle staged combustion setup, which means that none of it is going to be wasted. It'll all be put into the combustion chamber. And the main issue with this, of course, is the fact that you're going to have to deal with an either oxygen-rich or fuel-rich side. So what Scott Manley, as you said, goes into this a little bit more in detail. But basic gist of it is that Americans gave up on this design because to do it with fuel-rich was, I don't know exactly why, but...
I think it might be like very sooty.
Yeah, that's right.
And then oxidizer-rich started to oxidize, you started to lose material from your nozzle.
Yeah, so with fuel...
With fuel-rich, you get flow problems. You could get clogging, stuff like that. With oxidizer-rich, you could get, like, explosions and and start, for example, like combusting your nozzle.
Yeah, exactly. So with oxidizer-rich, metals don't like high oxygen, high heat environments. So what American engineers back in the 60s decided was that it was basically impossible. But the Russians decided to go forward with it, and they did metallurgical analyses, innovations and all that, until they could actually get a metal that could withstand the pressures and the temperatures inside of an oxygen-rich cycle. So that's where you get the RD-180, the RD-270, these massive Russian engines that still hold the record for did hold the record for chamber pressure and stuff for many, many years. And this is the RD-180, so this is the one that they use on Atlas V. This is a 1960s, late 1950s, early 1960s design, and it's still being used. They're still buying these from Russia, and these engines use that kind of system and use that kind of chamber pressure that now American engines in the form of Raptor can utilize. So with that high chamber pressure, it says here 268.9 bar, it can produce 170 metric tons. Oh, okay, this was 172 metric tons at 257 bar. So let's see, at this one they don't really give the thrust, but at around 268 to just under 270, they're going to be reaching probably like 180 metric tons. I can do the math a little later, but their goal is to do 300 bar and 200 metric tons. God, I can't talk today. God. Yeah. So yeah, 300 bar, 200 metric ton engine, which means that'll be about 440,000 pounds of thrust at 300 bar. And that is from an engine that's about 60% of the volume, 60% of the size of the Blue Origin BE4 engine, which will produce about 550,000 pounds of thrust. And that has a significantly lower chamber pressure. So an engine that pretty much can do the same amount of thrust at 60% of the size is pretty substantial.
Yeah, lots of work you need to do on like optimizing engine performances, optimizing the thrust to weight ratio. Because if you have like a really, really efficient engine, but it takes a room, like basically like a water like ship engine full of space, you're not going to get off the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have some really cool flames, and it's going to be very efficient flames, but they're not going to be getting you off the ground.
Yeah, it's kind of the idea with the nuclear engines and stuff. They're huge. Nuclear engines had other problems, but the fact that like those kinds of engines are so heavy and so large, you can't really get them into space. And even though they're fantastically efficient, they're just so big and heavy. So,
right.
So with the development of Raptor, we'll probably see some more developments with Starship coming much faster, and hopefully they're going to be moving those flight test articles, the engines at least, down to Boca Chica to attach them and do fitment tests on the Starhopper, and that may or may not lead to Starhopper launching and doing hops within the next 2 or 3 months. I mean, they said that they were going to do it by around March, but the tipping over of Starhopper in the winds of Boca Chica kind of pushed that back, of course. So who knows? We're going to follow this really closely, as this engine is super, super advanced. All of the technologies being used in this engine are cutting edge, very, very bleeding edge technologies that will definitely help humanity get to Mars. The methane, the Methalox fuel mixture, the super cooled fuel pumping system, the full flow, closed cycle, everything. It's going to be really, really dope. So we'll be watching that closely. And then I guess to close off, speaking of cutting edge technologies, we're going to go ahead and close off with something that Connor holds very close and near and dear to his heart because he is a member of this team. Just a little bit of backstory. Texas A&M is going to be going to South by Southwest so that's about spring break time period, about March 10th to March 14th, I believe.
In particular, SPACECraft is a little bit separate from A&M at South by Southwest this year. So the we aren't really in past years we've been with TAMU at South by Southwest during their presentations, but now we are actually partnering with a few companies. I'm not sure if I can reveal the details in this, but we have some industry partners, and we are hosting a competition during South by Southwest Gaming Expo, on the floor at the Gaming Expo.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, the competition is related to machine learning and AI. So more info will be coming out about that on our website, as well as probably we'll link to it on SED's information, as well as our website. I already said that now.
Don't worry, it's all cool.
Yeah,
we're getting used to this.
Yes.
So yeah, SpaceCraft. It's I guess, can you give a little bit of backstory on what SpaceCraft is?
Yes. So the SpaceCraft is a virtual reality engineering, design, and simulation platform. So basically, it's meant to be able to be used as a starting point for student teams and small aerospace or otherwise organizations that want to test out their designs. They can skip the development of complex, for example, gravity modeling or aerospace, atmospheric modeling, that sort of thing. Everything about the environment will already be modeled for you. You just basically select which models you want to use, and then you basically either put in your design just as is, as a 3D model, or maybe write in some supporting code that integrates basically seamlessly with these already pre-packaged models.
Yeah.
And then it is a very accessible way to test engineering designs without having to go into all the very expensive world of getting it the environment done for you.
Right. So, we've seen a lot of VR developments in the last few years, and we've also seen a lot of space simulators come onto the marketplace. So Elite Dangerous, No Man's Sky, and I guess you can kind of equate that game to this a little bit, but Star Citizen, the scope of the universe and the detail of the physics simulations and stuff. Of course, this is far and away much more accurate, of course, but with those developments, this kind of virtual environment, I'm guessing you guys are targeting this towards those kinds of just research organizations and stuff like that?
Yeah, basically mostly student teams as well as smaller aerospace companies, and we'll probably also be doing contract work for larger aerospace companies if needed, and in developing specific simulations. So the and also on the point of the games, we're basing our clients off of Unreal Engine 4. So that gives us our VR renderer and some tools for the interaction, as well as it has lots of great tools for various rendering stuff. You can pull up all these videos here. So do
you have one that we should look at specifically?
You can just do the top left one.
Top left one? All
yep. Right. Oh, it looks like you don't scale it properly, but you can. Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Make sure to tell it to our web dev team.
This is really cool.
An example of the SEV rover, the MMSEV. This is it.
You're crabbing.
Yeah, it's crabbing. Each of those wheel segments are individually, they have individual suspension as well as individual turning and motor. So it's a simulation of it going over a Mars surface. Yeah, it gives you an idea of the fidelity we're going for. We're going for much better than this, actually.
This looks like an early model. I've seen some of the newer simulations that you guys did, and this seems like an early model, so you guys are really stepping on it.
Yeah, that was done about 6 months ago or so, or maybe even more than that. You can show the just go through these. Yeah, this is on the similar landscape. This is a better simulation of the suspension in particular. As you can see, like the rocker bogie system functioning as designed. The real Curiosity doesn't go this fast. This is a rather sporty Curiosity. But
they're hauling.
Yeah, you might actually use this sort of speed for a rover if you had, like, for example, astronauts on the surface that could come repair it if it got stuck.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess so these will be research organizations, contracts, and just general corporations and stuff like that. Will this be open source? Can we use this for free, or will there be like a fee, or registration, or a subscription service?
For students, and basically as like a community version, we'll have like our platform. This is how it'll start out. It'll start out as this community version where it's a free platform. We'll have like basically our open source part of this is the simulations, like configuration, and what we call in systems, those like math models and like physics models, that sort of thing. That's all kind of collapsed into a sort of like system sort of architecture. The system is like a C++ class, or think about adding like Python and MATLAB support as well. Basically units of code that can be applied to many different scenarios and then combined to make an interesting simulation. So all that side of things is open source enough to the point where basically you have the header files for the server available. So you're basically recompiling the server, our compute server. Like, I haven't gotten to that. I should probably do a little bit of that. So the client is Unreal Engine 4 for now. We might actually have more clients in the future. But the server part of this, where actually the computation is happening for all these scientific models, that is done just using straight C++. And it's simple enough, and we provide the enough of the source code that you can actually recompile it and dynamically link your math models. So basically, like as long as a subclass of system, they have like integration with the simulation, and like a config allows you to select which systems go on which entities.
And the server that you guys are running, C++, as you said,
Yep.
That server where it actually crunches the number data to export into Unreal Engine, is that server running on on your side? So will it have to, say if I was trying to run something and I compile it, will it be running on a server in Texas A&M's in your Astro Lab, or will it be able to run on like my computer and then export into the client, Unreal Engine client that the Unreal Engine launcher that I'm currently running on the same computer? Would that be the case, or would I be like tunneling into another? I think you mentioned to me once about a GitHub repository and all that. So
yeah, I'll explain a little bit of this. So think of this a little like a Minecraft server, if you're familiar. You basically have the server program. That is basically the open source part of this. You can clone it from our repo. You basically download the files from our website or clone from our repo, and then you have an up-to-date repository, GitHub repository. Right. So then you have our server files and you run it wherever you want. You can have it running on your desktop. We actually only support, for right now, we only support Linux and Windows subsystem for Linux.
Okay.
So like that's a Windows 10 feature you can add on to your computer. You basically run it on the same computer, or you can have it on a Linux, like actual Linux computer, or you can do it on like an AWS Linux client.
Ooh.
So you can like host your server in AWS and have that be accessible like pretty much anywhere else, and have it be like scalable compute power, that sort of thing.
That's pretty awesome.
We're also looking into adding Mac support as well.
Mac support. Do you foresee that to be easier or harder than Windows? Just because Macs do run on, I guess Mac OS is a port of Unix. I've always heard.
Yeah, it's gonna be okay to run it there. Like it's harder because we have like our make files for the compiling of the server are written for Windows, like or Linux. Like I think a bunch of Bash is basically the distro we're working at. So we haven't yet gotten it working on a Mac yet, but you're free to like modify the make files as well. That's like the level of open sourceness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Basically, if it compiles, it's good to go.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I guess, and do you guys have a release date or something about this where people can actually start accessing the code and the files and be able to run it on their own computers?
We plan to do a release of the public platform around South by Southwest. So that'll be around March 15th. Like the South by Southwest Gaming Expo is March 15th to 17th. So the South by Southwest competition will be using a special version of our platform for the actual competition. But then we'll release our public version of this, as well as maybe also our South by Southwest version online on our website
Fantastic.
near that date.
That's going to be really awesome. I guess, so instead of studying for all the tests after spring break, I'll be getting ready for this, right?
Yes.
Do you foresee any mods and stuff? I know lots of community members in other space simulation, like in space simulation gaming, you know, you have different mods and stuff. For this kind of simulation, do you foresee people adding in things like the Millennium Falcon, Star Trek, and all that?
One thing about this is like it's very easy to make it very realistic. So I foresee like something like that's more realistic. Say, for example, the Expanse, like a total conversion for the Expanse, that sort of thing.
Wait,
like
by realistic though, do you mean
like using actual physics for the maneuvers and stuff like that? It's not like Star Wars where spaceships fly like planes.
And I guess you guys do have Mars here. Do you mean like an entire solar system in this simulation?
We already kind of have an entire solar system. We're working on procedural landscape technology that will allow us to have like think about star systems like human scale level of detail all the way down to the surface, anywhere on the surface of anywhere in the solar system.
Wow. And will this all be persistent? Will it be persistent? Or
Well, think about this.
will it be running? Will it have to run continuously for you to be able to access it?
Well, it depends on how you run it and how we progress with this. Like for now, it's basically something that you define like a start date for the simulation, and that might feed into like, for example, the trajectories for the planets and that sort of thing. And then you can run a simulation just using that.
And
You
that's
really
on
don't have
the
it-
that's on the server side, right?
That's
you
on
input
the
initial
server side.
initial conditions, and then it'll start the simulation from there.
Right. So then the sort of like MMO aspects of this hasn't really yet been explored. We might explore that in the future. There's a few interested parties that are looking at our tech and saying that they want to possibly make some games with it.
Okay. No, I see that like you guys are more focusing on the simulation aspect and working on trying to validate prototypes for technology demonstrators and stuff like that, but having it be able to do something where you can connect multiple different instances together, or have people collaborate together on different prototypes, that's going to be a real boon for testing and for people like NASA and private space companies to start testing their own prototypes.
Yeah.
And
We already plan to have this be multi-user. Like, for example, we could have somebody sitting in Texas network, of somebody sitting in China if the network access works out. I'm not sure how restrictive it is in China.
network access is always the problem with everything. Latency and everything.
Anyway, so if like across long distances, you could just collaborate in a simulation, and each be in the simulation getting the exact same data flow, and like the clients are light enough. It's basically the same sort of like data flow coming across as like a game, for example. Like it's just the data flowing across like what's changed between the last update and now.
So if you can stream like an HD or 4K movie, you should be able to do this fine.
Yeah, it also depends on the hardware and the infrastructure you have for your server, like where it's running and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I have a Raspberry Pi 3 here. I wouldn't be able to run an entire solar system on this little baby, would I?
Maybe. Depends.
Maybe, yeah.
Like, actually, we're getting like really good performance out of our like really simple stuff so far. Like, for example, you could probably run our solar system stuff. Like, we have the entire solar system, like all the planets and a few moons. That's running at, I think it maxes out about 2,000 hertz on i7.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well then, I look forward to running it on my Raspberry Pi. But yeah, this is really cool, and I just wanted to showcase this because South by Southwest is coming up, and you guys are going to be showing this off, and this is going to be something that I think is going to be really big for Texas A&M. And can you tell us what team you're on?
I'm the team lead for the system architecture sub-team. So I am working on, unsurprisingly, all the back-end C++, as well as communication with Unreal and coding like base classes for the Unreal. For then the UI team goes on top of those base classes, codes and interaction with like VR tools.
Okay, that's really important. Yeah, you're basically you're the back end. You're the most important part of the entire project, right here.
And then we have like a planets team as well. They're the ones working on the procedural planet services, and then we have a machine learning team working on technology for there, like a good hooks into like Python and other programs for being able to do machine learning testing, like using sample data from spacecraft.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, as well as a few others that I'm forgetting for now.
Okay, so maybe I know NASA's trying to explore machine learning techniques for rover driving, so that you can have the rover pick its own route to be approved by a human driver, or even just drive itself on another planet. And I know they're using machine learning, so maybe they can actually use that and simulate it inside of this architecture. So inside of this environment. So this is going to be really cool. Thank you very much for talking to us about that. And I guess we can go ahead and wrap up. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you guys next week. I think next week we're going to do Friday, the normal Friday schedule, and we'll probably start a little bit early. Just with some setup and making sure everything's working. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. This is Alejandro signing off. Per Aspera ad Astra or whatever. Gig'em. Yeah, Gig'em. Woohoo! So yeah, thank you very much, and have a wonderful weekend. Gig'em.